I don't know how to tell you this, but I entered the transfer portal.
Transferring out of in the Huddle situation? Okay.
Yeah. The problem is, of course, nobody bit.
I'm shocked because you have so many fans out there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I needed to, try things out, see if, with my eligibility to still be a broadcaster, test the waters, yeah. And no bites. So, am I okay to come back this season to our show, or are you going to have to find a new producer or co-host?
I don't think this show would work without you, Frank. You got too much of the technical know-how up here, So, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can let you back into the fold.
Thank goodness. Okay, we joke about this, but I can't imagine for some schools. Some coaches, I think, are okay with it.
Yeah.
But some schools, some teammates probably look at their teammates that choose to try to go and don't get the offers they want.
Yeah.
It's got to be uncomfortable as heck to a certain degree in some of those situations. I mean, what do you think here?
Well, I know there's a specific example. I'm actually thinking of a guy who just finished his senior year, and he tried out the portal a couple of years ago, decided to go back to the school that he was playing at and finished out his career. And everything I heard was pretty positive, I think. I mean, I think there's an understanding kind of in this day and age, if you are an exceptional player, that maybe you want to test the waters and see if you can go to that next level. And if you don't, there's always a home waiting for you, back where you originally signed up. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's, you want to leave? Well, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out of here, kind of a thing. And so that's it. But I do feel like, at least in the D3 mentality, that if you're willing to play and you want to do it, and it doesn't work out, they usually keep the door open for you, I assume. But I don't know. It depends on the program.
I'll tell you what. Since you're going to keep me for season 19, I'm going to tell you in this show what our first game, or one of our first games, will be, as we have Coach Pat Ruley from Rowan joining us to reveal who their week one opponent will be. We teased it a little bit on Twitter, but you're going to find out with us here on this show. And also, Bobak from RedditCFB joins us for a really earnest discussion about the D3 landscape in the entire college football landscape. If you know what RedditCFB is, you know that this is going to be a really can't miss discussion with him. So let's do this. Folks, welcome to season 18 of In the Huddle.
Is this our season finale?
Who knows? Well, JB, we're going to start things off here by talking about the last game of the year again. We usually do that in your kitchen, by the way. Hi, everybody. This is the kitchen.
This game, this one, the T-shirt that I'm not allowed to wear because I hate the WIAC and all the players in Wisconsin and all that kind of thing.
Apparently, according to legend.
I mean, I don't know. It seemed like Coach Walker and everybody on the Falcons seemed to appreciate us in Canton, but
look, we made.
I'm happy to support them.
We made some great friendships out there, and look, we also understood they have a base of media coverage, whatever you want to call it. Seth Howard obviously has gone way out of his way to give them front row center.
He's an alum, and he's
more
a huge
power.
Fan,
Absolutely. But we appreciate them letting us have the access as well along the way in the semifinals and the championship game. But let's look at these two teams, okay? First, the game itself, 24-14, the turnovers. I'm going to assume that Coach Spencer at North Central is able to really sort of look back at that game and say, we had our chances and we need to execute better next time. And we have to make sure there is a next time at this point. There were two big moments in that first half, realistically, where points should have been on the board for them. The fumbled snap early on, and then the interception in the second quarter there. Looking back now that we've been about a month and a half away from this game, what are your, memories, takeaways from that game that still stay with you here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the game turned initially on the fumble on the goal line for North Central. It should have been 14-0 at that point, but things kind of went the other direction. River Falls goes down, kicks a field goal. They had a chance, there at the end. North Central did, to maybe take a field goal and add some points to the board, but they elected to go for it. They felt like they had a play call that was going to work, and then there was the Sussler interception, and so it just that's a 14-point swing
at least.
And so when we were talking about the game, we always talked about, well, if you play it 10 times, maybe North Central wins it 7 out of those times, but one of the 3 situations was exactly this. I'm not taking anything away from the Falcons at all. Blaha was amazing. I mean, it was just the way he played. He was not going to be denied a national championship that night, and the way his offensive line shut down the defensive line of North Central was a big part of the game that I don't think we really talked about. I mean, J.P. Sullivan, one of the best players in the country, didn't really affect the game too much because he was bottled up by this big offensive line. I mean, he had some tackles, but he didn't really have that sack or those key plays that we were so used to him making. And so you have to give a lot of credit to the Falcons O-line, and one of the guys now is going to play for James Madison. So there were some serious talent there at River Falls, and what we've seen since that game is a lot of that talent is starting to trickle off to graduation.
Well, let's talk about it. Specifically, Caleb Blaha graduates, Gage Tim graduates. Both could have been the most outstanding players of that game. Goes to Blaha, obviously.
Tim was our defensive player of the year, and I think that's a legit statement.
100%. I think it was, based on the gameplay, especially in that national championship game, because he landed on that fumble. He got sacks at the right time. He was an influencing player throughout that game. Gage Tim was incredible there. But, you lose him, and then you see the portal activity that you just alluded to, and there's plenty of it. Will Blake Rohrer be back or not? There's still an open question on that, obviously. He's still seeing what's out there, and we're wishing him the best because, great guy. Got to really appreciate him over the last couple of games of the season and, talking with him and everything else. So, Blake, do what's best for you at the end of the day. We're rooting for you to do what you can do for you, okay? It's your turn to do what you have to do for you and all this stuff, too. On the North Central side, they lose J.P. Sullivan and others, obviously, to graduation.
Great players, yeah.
But, I didn't see nearly the portal activity from North Central players.
No, they seem to have locked that down, which is good. And, I think there's the culture that Coach Spencer has developed there is really that one where they are getting guys to commit for, either 3 or 4 full years. So I think that they're going to, hey, it's an even year. They seem to win national championships in even years. So maybe we'll be talking about them in Salem in January. But, they will probably enter this preseason, if not number 1, maybe number 2 in the country. I mean, their track record they developed, the quality of the program, the talent of the athletes that they have is so top notch that you just have to expect them to be back.
Look at the rest of the semifinalists. John Carroll with Jeff Behrman leaving, Nick Sumtenfelter graduating off and everything. That's going to be tough to return. Brian Polean's got his hands full for there as AD and now head coach. But Johns Hopkins, also not much portal activity from them. And we talked about that in the post-game press conference with Coach to talk about the idea. Coach Wadika, you just don't see it usually year to year, and you didn't see it again. That you get to Hopkins, and if you're there for the academics especially, you're not going anywhere else because that is the epitome of it. I mean, Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, a former Johns Hopkins football player in discussions for possibly 2028. Not to get political here, but people are starting to talk about him as a possible person out there. But he's was a Rhodes Scholar, I think, as well.
Yeah, you're going to be pretty smart to go to Hopkins.
so you look at these connections, you look at everything, and for those wondering why Johns Hopkins is where they are and why they may continue to influence things here, look no further than that aspect of it in the national roster ability they have. But North Central has the national roster ability from their success.
They were one play away from potentially winning that game in Wisconsin. Like, it wasn't like River Falls smoked them. I mean, they put up 48 points on them, which is impressive.
Yep.
And that's what Blaha does. But Hopkins could have won that game, and theoretically, then you could have said they could have won the national championship too.
Mount Union adds coaching staff now. Kevin Burke back, among others over there. So I guess the question is, will we see both, one or neither of the teams in the Stagg Bowl this year back in the Stagg Bowl next year?
Well, I mean, I think you got to pencil in North Central just based on the fact that they've been there 6 times in a row. And like I was joking around earlier, it is an even year. They seem to win on those years.
Oh, goodness.
So, it's a real mathematical equation I pulled out there. But with River Falls, the question is, if there isn't Caleb Blaha, if there isn't Blake Rohrer, if there isn't, DJ Fox and some of these really great players, and
Gage Tim,
can they, will there be, this sort of a, national championship effect? I mean, we saw that with Mount Union and Whitewater for many years. They would just, because of the constantly being on ESPN and the national attention, they just recruit in the next group, and they are competing once again. So maybe that'll happen at River Falls. Well, time will tell.
Right now, if I were sitting there making my top 5 for next season, I would probably go 1 North Central, 2 River Falls, 3 Johns Hopkins, 4 Mount Union. 5 is a tough one to come up with right now. I might lean toward a Mary Hardin Baylor type, or I might lean toward a Wartburg type.
They certainly made waves with their schedule.
Let's talk about that right now a little bit because what do we learn about next season through portal activity and other changes, and also the schedules now being released. That we've already talked a little bit about the portal, but respectfully out there, you see some of these schedules. River Falls is obviously playing Wartburg and vice versa. Yep. North Central is playing Wartburg and vice versa. So they're playing both, the 2025 National Championship participants is Wartburg. Yep. And they have Central and Co on their schedule, which is not easy either. And Monmouth, which is not,
playoff team, championship of the champions of the Midwest Conference. Yeah.
So, just from the scheduling mentality and how their defense plays alone, you might want to consider them as a number 5 team and see what they're able to do for the rest of the season. That week 2 game against North Central at Waverly, I think is going to be one that I might still go to here, despite that River Falls game the next week. I really am still circling that one to see, what the start of that whole scenario looks like. We'll see what Monmouth does versus Wartburg. But looking at other schedules out there that you've seen, what's sticking out for you right now?
Well, it's not necessarily I haven't seen a ton of schedules. I mean, the Wartburg one has gotten a lot of press, and then obviously there were a lot of people that were kind of giving UMHB a hard time for the Keystone game, which we'll get into maybe a little later. But for me, what I'm kind of walking away from last season is really, when it comes to this fall, I want to see who are the transfers in, right? Because the transfer D1 quarterbacks, guys like Josh Ehrlich and guys like Caleb Blah and Semptenfelter and Ferrucci. Was it Ferrucci? Ferrucci at Wheaton. Yeah, sorry if I messed that one up. But those kind of guys coming in will really, like we said, we saw 3 of the 4 semifinalists had these kind of quarterbacks, and I think this is probably what you're going to see more of in D3. And we'll see what happens in the fall, but I think we might have an interesting game to announce later. We'll see.
Why don't we actually get to that right now? Yeah. I think we should. A team that has been on the rise and that we featured pretty prominently toward the end of the season in our ECAC show was Rowan. The Profs who took the tie last season, and that tie ends up becoming a good bond for Coach Ruley and me, because I never let him forget about that tie for the rest of the season versus Case
You won't
Western.
let us forget it's pork roll.
Yeah, and that too. Yep. So just understand that we build relationships on weird moments in Division III. Sometimes that tie was one of them. But no, what we also began to realize is how he is really hellbent on getting the Rowan Prowse back into that national prominence.
Yep.
And we wanted to talk with him about how he springboards, he said, off that ECAC Bowl game, the win against Utica, and what's next, and who their Week 1 opponent is. You don't want to miss that. Coach, thanks for joining us. And, before we get into 2026, I kind of want to close out 2025 with you a little bit, because last time we saw you on our show, you were with your team. We talked about the ECAC pairings, and you guys got a really excellent draw versus Utica at their house, and you pulled out a really close but great gritty victory in that game. Looking back now at that experience, what did you guys take away from the ECAC Bowl game in that situation?
Yeah, I'm glad to be on with you guys. That was an awesome day, and it was exactly for me why we chose to try to go after it and play one of those games. It was against a really good team, and I talked to the team after, and I addressed them, and I said, the seniors are going to look back on this moment as, an amazing memory to cap off their career, but really their class being the part of getting kind of that over the hump, signature win in this new era in a big moment in a trophy game. Like in the first 2 years here, had such close games down to the wire with, in 2024, Johns Hopkins down at their place was a tight game with 30 seconds left, and you had, Salisbury in year one. That was they scored a touchdown to win with under 30 seconds left in the game. And then this past year, the 2 NJAC losses. So it was really a situation where we've kind of been still searching for that, big moment win to try to kind of turn the tide and have it not be this moral victory thing where, everybody around the program saying, hey, like close, and a great try, but, no cigar, basically. And, so for us to get that win, and then talking to the younger guys in the room saying, I think this is the moment we're going to look back on and point to as, the tide turning in terms of the mentality of the roster. Knowing that not only can we play with teams of that caliber, but we're able to pull those games out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we saw in 2025, Coach, was that the NJAC is back, right? I mean, lots of teams that were either in the playoffs or competing at a playoff level, at the very top. I know you guys were very proud to be back-to-back Breakfast Bowl, champs. That was a big deal. I mean, it really feels like there's this whole new energy and excitement around Rowan football. I mean, is the goal to go back to the days from when Frank and I were much younger guys, where Rowan was known as the Beast of the East, as it were?
Yeah, I think that's the charge. I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time around alums at some of these social events that we've tried to kind of, put together to, really rope back in the old guard, if you will, of those guys from the 80s and 90s under, Coach John Bunning and Casey Keeler and those national championship run and deep playoff run eras. And, Coach Keeler right across the bridge now at Temple, I keep telling people, we have high aspirations here, and I know there's big shoes to fill in terms of at some point in time, this program had, I think 5 national championship appearances in a 8 or 9 year window. And I said, it might sound crazy now, but I want us to look back on, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and as humbly as I can possibly say this, people say KC who, right? Like we want to bring this program to a point where we're making those runs and we're figuring out how to cross that finish line. And I know where our program is right now, we have a long way to go, and a lot of people out there might think that that's delusional or brash or whatever, but those are the standards in this program, and we're hoping that we can begin to prove that we belong in games against the elite people in the country, and we're trying to schedule as such.
Our good friend Aaron Van Buren actually got to talk with you and Coach Keeler about the days of Rowan gone by and the future that gets drawn from that. And so look for that documentary coming soon for sure. Aaron does a great job, did the UW Superior documentary back last year, so can't wait to see that. But enough about the past. Let's kind of look at the future now. And, how you develop things. You're not going to comment on this. I will. Clearly, there was discussion about you possibly having opportunities elsewhere at higher levels and things like that. And you basically said, I'm staying at Rowan no matter what. And there's a reason for that. Why stay at Rowan, and how is the messaging going with respect to, recruiting players out there that heard a lot of those messages about, oh, Ruley's gone probably, or he's going to be going elsewhere because he's that kind of great coach and has those aspirations. How did you deal with all that, and how has that response been?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Yeah, I think, for me, it was really easy in terms of, when people asked me directly, I gave them a direct answer, and I think that, there were opportunities and good ones for working for people that I respect. And, at the end of the day, there's just too much unfinished business here. What we've been able to kind of accomplish, it kind of feels like I've just gotten my feet under me, and the administration here has been phenomenal, and the new athletic director and the new deputy AD, the things we've been able to do here in a short period of time. We have some facility upgrades coming with a multi-million-dollar, varsity weight room that's right now under construction, that's going to, be done in June, and they're going to be putting a $500,000 huge video board, all LED video board in the stadium here in June as well, right after commencement. And so, very quickly, the new administration's really, changing the energy in the region in terms of corporate sponsorships and other creative ways that we're looking to help our guys out with. NIL type stuff, and that's a little bit of ways right now, but those conversations are going, and yeah, it was an interesting process, and I feel like recruiting's gone great, and I certainly have fielded my fair share of those questions through the month of December and January, and kind of been like, listen, part of winning is that other people are gonna want to work with you, and that's the reality of it. And I'd be a liar to say that I'm not gonna examine or pursue jobs that I think might be a great fit for myself and my family. But at this point in time, those jobs are few and far between, because this is a special place and they're doing right by me, and we have a lot to accomplish here still. So really excited to kind of continue on here, and looking forward to the 2026 season.
Yeah, Coach, before we talk about the 2026 season, just out of curiosity, because it's been a subject of conversation and social media and otherwise, and you have a front row seat for it as a recruiter, with the day and age of the transfer portal happening, and it's sort of the trickle down effects. I was just listening to a scout who was basically saying that now, since graduating high school seniors are having a harder and harder time getting into Division I opportunities, that the next logical step is to go D3, D2, and maybe for some of these guys it's only a couple of years and then they transfer out. We've seen a very small handful of D3 guys pull that off in this off season. But what's it been like for you, Coach? Trying to maintain this core team that won an ECAC championship and wants to make that next step, but also probably getting inquiries in from people who might be looking at different opportunities and just trying to get high school kids in. I mean, it's a full-time job in and of itself. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I think the new element that, is something that obviously some people know and they're realizing, but roster retention and recruiting your own roster is kind of still part of it, right? I think that, with how rampant the transfer portal is, and whenever guys have success in your program and they go home for winter break and they're around people in their communities or their coaches or teammates, or people are, potentially in their ear and telling them that they could, do better or be at a higher level and those types of things. And you got to kind of navigate some of those conversations. And I could potentially be a little bit, different than some other coaches out there in my approach to that. We have some rules and parameters around, testing the transfer portal and those types of things. And I don't want to be a hypocrite in regard to like, we are going to recruit guys out of the transfer portal. And so for me to demonize the transfer portal on my end of things in terms of guys trying to figure out what's right for them and their, and their families and their future, and to completely shut them out, I think is a little bit hypocritical. And so we have guardrails in place, so it's not the wild, wild west. And, I think a lot of the guys that we pull from the portal, this past, winter, for example, a lot of those guys were guys that we had relationships with when they were in high school that we were recruiting, and they chose to, go to a higher level school or go out of state to a private school or something like that. And then after one semester, it wasn't all that was cracked up to be, and their situation wasn't what they wanted, and they came back home. And and some of it was us filling needs in terms of graduating a lot of guys in a position group or feeling like we were really young. And so I think we probably brought in about a dozen guys, so we're looking to bring in 25 to 30 guys in the freshman class. We brought in another 10 or so guys in the portal, really still keeping the main thing, which is player development and the relationships that we have in South Jersey and the greater New Jersey, Philadelphia area. And, hopefully getting the guys that, if they're not full scholarship players and they can't go do that somewhere else, then we're trying to keep them at home, and we're looking to, land those guys here, and that's the whole thing. So, yeah, it's been a good process so far, but I mean, the portal's definitely tricky, and certainly there are guys right now that I feel like we are recruiting that 5-10 years ago, yeah, they were Patriot League level players. They were, NEC level they were low-level FCS, scholarship level players, and the trickle-down effect of the roster limits and other things, they don't have those situations anymore. And so acknowledging that with guys too, and saying like, listen, at the end of the day, if you come here and you kill it and you feel like you want to potentially pursue another opportunity, obviously I'd hate to see it go, but if you get those opportunities here, it's because that you created disproportionate value to our program and helping us be successful. So if that's what you want to pursue, then obviously I'll have to respect that.
So now let's look at 2026. And obviously the Landmark and the NJAC have a scheduling agreement that basically forces crossover of a couple games for your out-of-conference games besides your NJAC conference games. But then you end up with a game that you're still having to schedule. And from our information, lacrosse had to back out of a situation in terms of coming out to Rowan. And we understand, I think everybody does, that when you switch a head coach situation, and good luck to Coach Weifel now, who was just announced as their head coach, things have changed versus St. John's in their first game of the season. So they have an interesting trade-off there with you. But then you're left without a game pretty late in the whole process here. How did scheduling work here, especially as a team that I would call an interesting NPI effect team for anybody that will play you, because you stand to be in that 30s to 60s range if you lose a game, but you have a strong enough schedule to be in that range generally, depending on if you lose one game, two games, or whatever it may be. People know that now as they try to schedule you. So how much of a challenge was it to schedule that last game? And if you'd like, go ahead and reveal who ultimately your week one opponent will be in 2026.
Yeah, so things happened with the scheduling with lacrosse, and they chose to not take a trip all the way back out here to the East Coast. And I think some of it was, from what I heard, expense driven. And because they made the trip out there, I think Carnegie Mellon last year, and they've had that expense, and so that kind of was what it was. And yeah, late in the process, and to be honest, even that arrangement was after fielding a lot of other, communications with people closer in proximity to us and trying to land a game. And, some people that we reached out to really weren't interested in playing. And so it was pretty challenging trying to find a team. And, I think for me, as we're looking to continue to try to elevate this thing and create a great experience for our guys, I've always said, like, I want to try to go test ourselves against some of the cream of the crop in the country. And, the administration that we have here now is certainly in support of us, maybe having a little bit greater of a travel budget and those expenses, that come into that, at the expense of us actually going and playing quality people and trying to, create a national brand here. And so obviously going to somebody that, we ended up scheduling a game with somebody who in a lot of people's world, people don't want to schedule them, and so I think that happens with some of these people that are out there nationally that, are looking for games that people don't want to schedule them. And so week 1 in 2026, we have the boys from Belton, Texas at Mary Hardin Baylor. They're coming up here Friday night of opening week at 6 p.m. And we're going to play the, 3-time national champions in the last decade or so, and, test ourselves and really see, what we're made of against, one of the, probably one of the Mount Rushmore programs of, the 21st century, in Division III football. And really excited to do that, and so I've had some conversations with Coach Harmon over the last month or so, and, we kind of got it across the finish line here in the last, week, and really excited and, really excited for the challenge. And at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, just really looking to see how we stack up against a program that's been at an elite level for a very long time now.
Coach, my feelings on it. You had talked a little bit about what NPI does or doesn't do in these types of situations, and I think it's actually a great idea. Ultimately, you look at the entirety of your schedule, but I think that's one of the things. It's not one size fits all, but nationally, you have to have a certain situation where it fits your entirety of your schedule, and I think you've got a good position there to do it, and I think it's to Mary Hardin Baylor's benefit to have this game as well, because I think it helps them, and that mutuality won't always exist in these situations. JB, I haven't really talked to you much about this, but what were your thoughts when you heard this?
I think it's awesome, because there will be a handful of really exciting week 1 games. We've seen a few already, posted online, mostly in the Midwest. Let's face it, but this gives Region 2 and the Northeast a nationally relevant game in week 1. I mean, I think we should probably just plan to be in New York City that weekend, and go there and be do our game day live and see it right up and close and personal. I know you've seen the Crusaders in person a few times. I have not yet, and I haven't made the trip to Rowan. And I want to get the pork roll or the Taylor. It's the pork roll this year, right? Not the Taylor ham. So I want to try that out, and I think it'll be amazing.
And Coach just teleport accidentally into a different stratosphere or anything. He had a little tech glitch, but we wanted to finish up with them and say, Coach, for those that have heard the news, and not many people have known it before this reveal, but those that do know it, what's their reaction been? Has anybody said you're crazy for doing this? Or, what have your players even said? Because I'm sure they at least know what's going on.
Yeah, we actually had a team meeting this morning where we addressed that with the team, and that was the first time they've known. And yeah, I think it just is added motivation, and it's for the guys that we're recruiting and the guys that we have recruited here in the first, cycle and a half. It's just us, kind of putting our money where our mouth is in terms of how we've approached it. Is like, we want to challenge ourselves. We want to see what, the cream of the crop at this level, can do. And, we might realize real quickly that we're still a ways off, and that's okay if that ends up being the case. But the only way that we're looking to get this program back to being a nationally relevant program is really being able to figure out what we still have to improve, and playing a team like Mary Hardin Baylor that is going to give you a great test in terms of having quality talent and a team that's had championship pedigree. But that's what we're looking to do, and so for us, it was just about figuring out who we would be able to play that kind of checks that box, and they ended up being that team.
But was it a cheer or a eye roll moment from your team? I'm curious now that you said that it happened just this morning. Did they cheer and get excited like they did with the ECAC show, or what was the ultimate reaction?
I think it was. I guess some of them were potentially surprised. I think that, a couple of our guys had thought we were playing a team from Wisconsin, and then we hadn't really gotten into it. We hadn't gotten into a ton of detail on which team it was, but we had, at some point in time, somebody had mentioned something, and so it kind of threw them off a little bit. But no, I think by the end of the meeting, when we were getting up and going, there was certainly just buzz in the room. And I think it's just, again, they know that all summer long and all spring and heading into the year, that week 1 we're going to be in for a great test that really is going to, kind of dictate right out of the gate, what type of statement we're looking to make in 2026.
Absolutely.
Coach, we appreciate you joining us. 2026 will kick off in a very interesting way, thanks to you and your team, and for you taking this risk, and for also UMHB to buy an airline ticket for their guys and to make this trip too, because it ain't cheap to do this.
Yep.
And kudos to them for doing this. They took it on the chin about the whole Keystone announcement last week. But I think hearing this for some people will now help them understand the balancing act that goes into scheduling and what they're trying to accomplish right now, because this is a very, very good matchup for them on their NPI record, for sure,
matchup, yeah.
And for you as well. So best of luck in the meantime. Try to enjoy the offseason a little bit if that's possible. And any last words or last thoughts from you before we leave you?
Now, when Coach Harmon and his boys come up here, I got to make sure to get them some pork roll, egg, and cheese sandwiches, because that's what that's called, JB.
That's right.
I love it.
All right, well, we'll see you in September, Coach.
Sounds good.
Well, UMHB at Rowan.
The Crusaders coming up to Joyzy.
Everybody thought it was going to be a Wisconsin team, including his own players, apparently.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, they had to deal with lacrosse, and then I imagine, budgets and stuff. So, yeah, they're just taking a trip to Minneapolis now. It's a little bit of a shorter drive. so
people wonder.
Sorry.
Yeah, but people wonder, okay, what does this really do to this team? You look at the two landmark games; they're both winnable games for Rowan. So if they start the season 2-1, let's say they lose this game, okay, and I think it's going to be a pretty good game. This is not going to be a 91-7 Albright hosting UMHB game from 2018. Okay, folks, it will not be that.
No.
If it is, we'll come up with some kind of wager with somebody, I'm sure, out there. But, look, UMHB is still UMHB. They still have a lot of D1 transfers coming in to get the playing time and the exposure and everything else. Okay, Coach Harmon's got a great team out there. There's no doubt, and they will be ready to play in that game on a Friday night, no less. But, they lose that game, and they split between Christopher Newport and Salisbury to either you get a tiebreaker for Pool A or lose that tiebreaker. And at 8-2, what I even said to Coach when this came up in discussion between us was, I think your NPI, based on how it all plays out, with the NJAC being one of the stronger conferences usually year to year, is that you will still be at 8-2, a very prime candidate for Pool C, even though we'll lose a slot to the NESCAC next year.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think
maybe two.
Losses never are good inside NPI because of the way they're treated. Even if you play it to within 1 point, it's still a loss. That's the same value less than a win versus number 241. Mm-hmm. We always say that. But long story short here, I believe is Rowan is putting themselves into a position, NPI-wise and otherwise, to really kick off the season, to find out who they are and not kill off their NPI in the process. Yeah. Do you want to play devil's advocate, or you want to go straight up on it?
I think I'll probably go straight up, and it's sort of a little bit of a sidebar, which is funny because when we've talked about NPI over the years, originally it was sort of set up for hockey and for sports that had more games. Well, I try to support the D3 hockey guys on X, and one of them tweeted recently, "NPI is broken," and I was like,
"Really? Who knew?"
And this was set up for you guys more than for football. Yes. Like, you're just realizing this now. Like, oh boy. But yeah, I mean, I think a loss to UMHB in week 1 is not necessarily the be all end all, but it'll depend on the kind of season that UMHB has. Like, they will need to win the ASC probably, and they'll need. I think
it's Moravian and Lyco are the two other teams that they'll have to warm up with.
Moravian had a rough year last year, and
Coach Long is left now for Bucknell.
Yep. So I mean, I think that they have a great opportunity, and if I'm a Rowan prof, I mean, they barely lost those games to Salisbury and CNU. Like, they were there. Like, they were.
Double overtime and 1 possession.
Yeah, so I mean, they very easily could have won the NJAC and gone to the playoffs. And I think, kind of like what we heard from Coach Walker after the Stagg Bowl and the press conference, winning these bowl games are important stepping stones to have a playoff kind of game, single elimination, for a championship, whatever you want to call it. is a big deal, and it's something that Rowan can build from. Just like, I'm not saying that Rowan's going to be a national champion in a couple of years, but if I'm Coach Ruley, like, why not? I mean, River Falls did it. Why can't we?
Let's see what happens with it ultimately. Yeah. But congratulations on them for taking a chance, and I think it balances out some of the criticism that UMHB's been getting about the Keystone situation.
Yeah.
And I think it makes a little bit more sense right now what's going on. Now, if I had to guess, I'm going to guess that UMHB's paying for Keystone's travel down.
They have to be.
I don't see how they'd be financially viable enough right now to afford it themselves.
Yeah.
So, they're paying for that and paying for a trip up to New Jersey probably this year. That would mean,
well, they have one of the bigger budgets, so
yep.
I mean, hey.
We'll see how that works out. But there's a lot of money being tossed by these ASC schools to remain viable scheduling-wise, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yep.
Coaching changes, we've got a lot of them. I don't think we had nearly this many last year, and there's still some shaking out, no less, and we probably are missing one or two on here.
Yeah.
But
so apologies, if you can get through the ads, you can read them on D3Football.com.
I couldn't even stay. I'm on the page, and 4 times I got that virus thing on his page, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, there's got to be a better way. Pat, please listen to us, please, one time.
Yeah, we're speaking as fans.
Yes, and fans and friends of D3. There's a much better experience to be had somewhere there. Geneva, we'll start with them, and Coach Gene DeMarco retiring after 33 years. Tom Contenta was promoted on January 28th, 2026. Then there was Wittenberg. Jim Collins was let go. BJ Code was hired after Thanksgiving time. He's an alumnus of Wittenberg. Ithaca, Mike Turper is a Cornell assistant now, and Brandon McGuire was elevated from OC to head coach just a couple weeks ago on the 4th of February. Buffalo State, they lose Lazarus Morgan after 4 seasons. Mike Neal, who is a former Whittier head coach. Well, the Poets will be back, but he'll be elsewhere in Buffalo State. February 11th was that a higher date, so that was a long time coming for them as well.
Yeah.
Kalamazoo, Jamie Sorbo focuses on his AD role, and John, I want to say Krajacik is the right pronunciation. C-R-A-J-A-C.
I think it's with K, though. It's K-R-A.
Okay, K-R-A.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, well, we'll get it right in the post. Coach, apologize for that.
Yep.
But on December 19th, 2025 was that elevation or announcement. Averett, Patrick Henry took a role outside athletics. Matt Quinn was named as their head coach in December of 2025. Nebraska Wesleyan, Brian Keller retired after 30 seasons. That was kind of a quiet, farewell there. Jacob Donahoe, the OC and QB's coach of Co, goes over to Nebraska Wesleyan as head coach now. Sewanee, Andy McCollum, relieved of his duties, went 8-22 over 3 seasons at the College of the South. Joe Freitag, the OC at Monmouth, was named as head coach on December 11, 2025. Waynesboro, Cornelius Coleman, after 4 seasons, was dismissed. Larry Wilson, who was the OC, is elevated to head coach. Alvernia, Steve Azanese, after 4 years, is gone. And Stephen Devlin, on December 23rd, was named as head coach. He was the associate head coach and DC at Ursinus, actually. Changes over there for sure. Knox, Aaron Willits, after 5 seasons, resigned. Adam Gonzaga, the former Lawrence head coach, who really got screwed
formerly of Lake Forest, who worked for Coach Cat.
But after 1 season and trying to turn the thing around in earnest and scraping things together because they had to lose that 1 game because of injuries and roster issues and whatnot. But he finished the season, got that team to finish that whole thing.
Impressive.
It was, and for him to have not gotten that chance at Lawrence, you know what, Knox, good on you. Good on you.
It's a good hire.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wish him nothing but the best in that situation there. Bethany, Brandon Robinson, 4 seasons. He's gone from Bethany. David Blake on the 23rd of December. He's from Kent State. He was named head coach. He was kind of like a logistics analyst, et cetera. It sounded like from the description. Hamline, the Pipers, had Chip Taylor since 2016, but he stepped down. And Bob Davies, on also December 23rd, 2025, was named. He was the OC at Carleton College, so moves over to Hamline. We still have more, folks. Gettysburg, Maurice Banks, the coach since 2020, leaves. Michael Green, the DC of Hobart, goes.
I knew he was going to get the call this offseason. It was time.
Well, very similarly, and it was accidentally that lands like this. Catholics, Mike Catelius, after 8 seasons, he's elsewhere in the school system right now after his battle with cancer and everything. So, Coach, we still love you, man, and wishing you well.
Miss you.
Corey David, though, who was also one of those guys while he was at Muhlenberg, everybody's like, well, when's Corey going to get his chance here? Yeah. He went over to Eastern for a year, and now he is the head coach at Catholic as well. So good for him indeed. Lebanon Valley elevated Chris Thompson from the interim HC to a full-time head coach at this point. So congratulations to him. We just told you about Lawrence's Adam Gonzaga being forced out after 1 season. Dan Galante, who was the class of 87 and a recent high school coach out there. He is their new head coach, and raise some eyebrows there for sure, but on how this all transpired. But you know what, Coach, make the most of it in that role for sure. Loris had Steve Helminiak leaving, and Brandon Novak took over. He was announced around the 19th of December. He came from St. John's University, so no longer a Johnny, or maybe forever Johnny.
Staying in conference, I guess.
Yep, you got it. Susquehanna, the guy we know, Tom Perkovich, 11 years as head coach. Tough to believe it's been 11 years.
11 years, really?
Yep.
Wow.
He goes to U of Albany. He gets an FCS head coaching position, much like Jeff Behrman did. So it's a couple of nice elevations there this year. And it's Chris Pincinci, I want to say, or Pinsence. The former
looks like,
New Haven head coach. So I think he took a year off, and now he's back in head coaching. John Carroll, Jeff Behrman to Bucknell, Brian Polian, the AD and head coach. We talked about him briefly earlier. He's now the head coach. Matt Janis, he leaves lacrosse for Northern Michigan. Probably the worst kept secret out there.
D2 school, yeah.
We heard this happening for weeks, and it finally gets announced. And we wish him well out there. Coach Janis was always really, really great with us over the years, so it's nothing. I'm not trying to be sarcastic about it, but it was really known, for whatever reason, that this was probably going to happen. But Michael Zweifel, the former Dubuque wide receiver, Gagliardi Trophy winner 2011, defensive coach at UWL, elevated just basically a couple days before this show's being recorded earlier this week.
Yep.
Then this one is the old presto changeo swapper around scenario. So stick with me, folks. Delaware Valley's Mike Isgro joins Duke Greco at D2 Westchester. So he goes to the school Duke Greco, the former Delaware Valley head coach, is at. Bill Zwan Jr. on January 12th, he leaves Westchester to become the Delaware Valley head coach.
It's an even trade right there. Just a swap.
Yeah.
I need a coach. Okay, you can take mine. I'll get yours.
You can't write this stuff, okay? I mean, some of these things you look at, you're like, how does this work? Not necessarily as bad as the Buffalo Bills, just elevating their OC and getting rid of their head coach everybody loved at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, that may be the epitome of bad coaching changes out there. And I don't know if this is bad, good, or indifferent, but this is unusual.
It's ironic.
Yes, ironic.
Coincidental.
So, Coach Swan, can't wait to meet you and hear more about your story, because I think he was at Westchester for a little while there, actually, too.
Yeah, they're good programs. So,
Moravian's Jeff Long, who we got to see in the opening of the season this year against Muhlenberg. He joins Jeff Behrman at Bucknell as a coordinator. Mike Kane, it'll be the interim head coach. He's been with Moravian since June of 2022. That was announced in January. William Patterson, Sean Williams left, and Edwin Edwards, who's the DC at TCNJ, or was the DC, was announced in February to become the head coach. And Stevenson, Ed Huddle, retired after more than 20 seasons. And Josh Hogue is going to be the head coach. He was the OC. They're elevating him. And we also want to pay homage to Augustana's Dick Maloney, not a head coach at this point, but 53 years of coaching, announced his retirement. Coach Bell, loses a good one over there for sure. And, congratulations to him on having such a long and storied career. Coach
probably
Maloney,
a few national championship rings, too.
probably somewhere in that cater of his. But enjoy your retirement, my friend. You've earned that for sure.
Absolutely.
Rest up and enjoy everything else that football has to offer now without having to be on the field every Saturday, for that matter.
Yeah.
So listen, we asked a friend to join us, a friend who retweets us on occasion, and
He got Sparkle Man trending on Stagg Bowl.
he indeed did. I appreciate that. But it's Bobak, I believe is the way to pronounce it correctly. It's a person that is behind the screen all the time, but he's a little bit more and more become known to folks out there as essentially one of the founders of RedditCFB, especially on X, Twitter, formerly. And the following his group has out there is phenomenal. But he loves to promote the stuff that's D3 based as much as the stuff that's FBS based out there. And we forged a good back and forth with him over the years. And we asked him to join us because we want to talk about D3 in the entire college football context right now and where it falls and some of the things to watch with it. Had a nice long discussion and powwow with them, and here it is.
Yeah.
Bobak, thanks for joining us. And I'll tell you, I know your influence on college football generally because whenever you grab one of our tweets or my live tweets on Saturdays at games, I see the number of views and all that stuff just pop through the roof, and I'm like, I bet you it's RedditCFB, and sure enough, you have shared it. You've seen some funky videos over your time, watching some of our stuff over the years. But a lot of people don't even know how you got started, who you are, and all that stuff. Why don't you tell folks how this even got to be, such a big thing on X and elsewhere, for that matter?
Yeah, that's the great question. Well, first of all, it's great to join you two because I always love the content you guys put out on all mediums, but obviously I see a lot of it on X. RCFB, it's a part of, it's one of the many communities on Reddit, and there's a lot of communities on Reddit, some good, some bad. We're all independent of each other. So I was one of many people who just follows college football. I remember after my oldest son was born 14 years ago, I would just kind of sleep in shifts with my spouse, and at night, weeknights in the fall, lots of college football happening all the time. And so I would start finding a place to also, participate in the conversation, and found Reddit. And then it's all volunteer, right? So they asked me if I'd be willing to help out. I have over the last, 25 years here and there helped with online forums. I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. They had an X account back when it was Twitter. But anyway, they had a Twitter account. And they needed help with it because all it was auto tweeting posts, which is, a lot of, I think, organizations started using X that way. We're talking, 2012, 2013 era, right? So I started helping out. We kind of started to hammer out a voice. Now, the actual account, RedditCFB, it isn't just me. Like, I'm part of the team. There's probably half dozen of us that are regular, I would say, contributors to it. And we always try to keep maintain a voice, although sometimes it differs. And, we love college football. I think that's what it boils down to. We love college football. And if you love it, what makes college football special? I mean, I'm a weird one. I don't even follow NFL that closely. To me, it's college football, and then I never want to see football again for like 4 months, and then I kind of get back into football by summer again, and then it's like all hands on deck. It's ready to jump in. And seeing, for example, when you approach it in that way, when it's a volunteer aspect where you're doing it not because you're trying to chase what necessarily will get the most clicks, you're instead chasing what's genuinely interesting. So that's where, for example, I love content that isn't just FBS P4, well, P2 now, right? That isn't just the creme de la creme. I don't care about Alabama all the time. I mean, they do interesting things, but I mean, there's other things to talk about, both at the Division I FBS, at FCS, at D2, D3, NAIA, International, JUCO, like whatever level, like that stuff is out there. I always joke, like, you see Sickos Committee, I'm like, we were Sickos before they were like a brand. But and again, that's why so much, whenever I'll just see some of the things that you guys put out, I find it really intriguing. And I'm like, people who love this sport will enjoy this. And I think that's where you find where that amplification, I mean, sharing it is just amplifying what's already working, and if it's working, people will enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, looking back from your perspective, what are some of the things that sort of stood out to you the most in the 2025 season, D3 or otherwise? Obviously, that we have some of our thoughts on that too. But there were a lot of interesting things. There were a couple of national champions at the D3 and the D1 FBS level that we never saw coming. I mean, it was in that year. In that respect, I think that the fun part about this year, it wasn't very predictable. Was that your experience too, kind of covering it from a higher level?
I think you're absolutely right. I was going to joke that we finally saw college football return to its rightful place and being dominated by the North. Because think about it. We had Indiana, Montana State, Ferris State, Wisconsin, lacrosse, but that, the North dominating, okay, I see you, Mary Hardin Baylor, but, they're basically, it's been a Northern thing for a while now. And then, even NAIA, which is also kind of redundant because they're almost all in the North. It's like Grandview. And even the Northern California team won the California JUCO, in addition to Iowa Western winning. And even in Mexico, the Northern Mexican team won. So all of that, I just said, it's gravitating to the North Pole in a lot of ways. But I think you're right. It's been really interesting to see teams that historically you didn't expect. Now, I acknowledge River Falls has been good a while ago, but never this good, and never the level. Because I live here in the Twin Cities. It's actually snowing really heavily outside my window right now. I live here in
you keep that
right just outside Minneapolis. So you guys are in Florida right now, aren't you?
It's about 80 degrees and sunny outside. We should be
doing man, yeah, no, it ain't 80 degrees and sunny right now. No, hey, let's like that's the outside right now. Right,
turn it.
Yeah. So.
Oh my goodness.
But anyways. No, I mean, it's something to just see this level of I live out here, so River Falls is basically, I always joke, they're like the Twin Cities campus of the University of Wisconsin system. They are by far the closest to this area, and we run into a lot of folks out here who went there usually for like maybe a teaching credential or something like that, because like a lot of the Wisconsin states, they were normal schools historically, and it's just fascinating to see them to climb up, to surprise everyone. And, I think the only team that would have Indiana, I put an asterisk because last year they were really good. So this year it wasn't like, whoa, where did this come from? To me, the only team that might have matched this would have been had Illinois State managed to upset Montana State in that FCS title game, in which case we're like, this team made it all the way through, and made North Dakota State say, all right, we're done. We're going FBS, forget this, in the process, So I think this has been absolutely fantastic season. And it's really intriguing, just to kind of talk a little bit more about Division III in general, to see how, I think the last count's at least 11 D3 players managed to transfer portal to FBS programs, which is remarkable. I think like 4 to the Big Ten and 2 to Wisconsin. Wisconsin had luck already with that because they had that Bethel player who's been just dynamite on defense for them.
That young.
So it just shows the level of talent that exists at that division and that gets overlooked sometimes.
Yep. So I'm glad that you caught it wasn't lacrosse, it was River Falls, because Seth Howard was literally driving to your place, I think.
Oh, man. No. You don't understand. Like, I caught myself in the middle of that. I'm like,
you got it. But you bring up something I want to talk to you about a little bit, which is the intersecting storylines between Division III and the upper divisions seeming to become more prevalent right now. Okay, we got the St. Francis story of a team dropping down from FCS down to Division III coming up here, and the transfer portal implications that occurred there, and some crossfire between Division III purists and Division I fans saying, oh, the hell with Division III, why would they want to stay, and stuff like that. But also, the influence that Division III is having on the upper divisions inside the portal, and the possibility of some folks in Division II and FCS maybe actually wanting to go to a D3 program to get some better playing time and things like that. What are you seeing and sensing right now with all these administrative changes that we're seeing in all these divisions, how the impact is playing out for ultimately Division III here as a national influencing division?
I think that's a great question. I mean, there's a couple of angles you could look at it here. I mean, number one, I think a lot, I don't know. First of all, it's great that Division III has got their national championship on a good, main network easy to find for the casual fan. And those who tuned into that exceptional championship game saw that there were some D1 FBS transfers that were in that game. And they went to those teams because they just decided the life of FBS just wasn't for them. And I can't blame them. I mean, it is a very different experience. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but to be at these different divisions is a completely different experience. And I mean, it's a lot like the players who are deciding what to do right out of high school. I mean, how hell-bent are you on trying to get into a D1 program where you're still going to have an incredibly difficult time getting to the NFL if that's your goal? So do you do the JUCO route? Do you do the D3 route? And if you're going to do the D3 route, do you think about the fit of the school, the roster management, all of those things? Or are you just going because you're chasing a name? I mean, I have no idea how this worked, honestly. Like, I have not gone back and but I remember back when St. John's, when I first learned about the school like 20 years ago, they were famous for having like 1 billion players on the squad. And I'm like, granted, it's an all-men's school, and probably it's kind of like the best club on campus. It might end up being that, but I mean, part of me is like, if you're going there to like be a starting job, I mean, one of those. I remember I covered the last Tommy Johnny game when it was in Allianz Field out here, and I remember in the press room, like, this is one big guy, and he's still in the NFL. I forgot the lineman's name, but I'm like, he went and he got drafted in like the 5th round, and is still there. But I mean, like, but
Ben Barch.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
but
I think still.
Yeah, he is. Isn't that fantastic? You got to love stories like that. I think the one biggest concern is perhaps this era we are in the portal. It's less likely for a D3 player who's just absolutely exploded at that level to then, they'll probably be incentive to maybe move to another division at this point. I think that's the biggest concern. But does that mean D3 stays pure? Does that mean it sticks closer to what it's always been? It's about playing football. It's about enjoying football. It's extending that career. And at the same time, making those connections that are really important, and those, that self-discovery that comes with the collegiate experience. I think that's where D3 has always kind of been valuable and kind of fit in my mind. Although I have to say, I saw the portal changes that are coming to D3. I believe they start in August. It's interesting. I don't know. I didn't realize, I never appreciated how the D3 transfer portal system worked before that, or non-portal, I should say, like self-report. I'm going to just be like a stealth potential transfer out here and then potentially move. But I thought that made sense. But I think this new change where after 30 days, you have to actually enter the portal, the actual portal itself, that's going to be fascinating, and to see what dynamic changes there, because I think that to me is the most interesting aspect of it, especially when you see, for example, these 11 guys, there's been more than that, but I'm just over the years, but these 11 guys this season that took the portal, they're now on FBS teams. How do they do? Like, if any, and here's the thing, I'm not saying all 11 have to do great. If one of them does really well, I guarantee you more guys are going to think like, I'm going to be that guy next year. So we'll see how that goes too, and how that affects the ecosystem of D3 players.
I think Liam Danitz probably has the best opportunity, really, with his size and skill and speed out there, joining Matt Young in Wisconsin. It'll be interesting to see how they interact out there for sure. And it gives us a little bit of incentive to watch the other Saturday football. For us, the other Saturday football is the FBS version of it, not just D3. But it'll be interesting to see that. Your turn, sir.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was kind of remembering something I think we brought up during the playoff run. When you look back on it now, 3 of the final 4 starting quarterbacks in the D3 playoffs were D1 transfers. And so I think that's probably something that's going to become more common. And I think for teams that need or want to compete for a Stagg Bowl championship, we're going to probably see more teams going out there to try to find that D1, maybe FCS level guy, and bring him in and kind of elevate the program. Even Wheaton, who had that really great run in the season, their quarterback, Mark Ferrucci, from Holy Cross. So, I think it's becoming more common now in D3, especially, and we were just talking to Coach Ruley of Rowan, and he's saying, like, now they're recruiting guys that, 5-10 years ago wouldn't ever think about D3. They're like, Patriot League level guys. But now they're getting, with all the stuff that's going on in the transfer portal, like, good luck trying to get a D1 scholarship or getting a serious look, because there's just so much competition out there.
And not only that, but the way they keep extending eligibility for the up division, it's getting crowded. There just aren't that many slots anymore. So there's a lot of guys who frankly get up there and it's just not, it's not what they thought the collegiate experience was going to be like. It simply isn't. And I mean, you can argue that can happen to anybody at a lot of reasons people transfer in D3 programs is not because they're chasing a brand, they're just chasing fit, and I respect that. Sometimes that's, I think, the most important thing parents don't realize when their kids are going to school. It's like, also find a school that I almost made an analogy like, don't divorce for somebody else, divorce for yourself. I am married and happily. But part of me is like, it reminded me of that saying, except kind of talking about D3, like if you're going to go to a school, be sure you're in for the whole thing, you're going to be there. And don't just pick a school, because I'm not even going to name the kid, but I grew up in because honestly, I don't remember, but I grew up in the armpit of California, Bakersfield. And one time I was doing an off-season kind of, I thought it would be interesting just to cover a D3 team that just doesn't get coverage. So I picked Northwestern of Minnesota out here up in the North Metro. A very nice coach up there. He let me kind of attend a practice. And then when I got there, though, I looked at the roster. I'm like, one of these guys is from Bakersfield? How the hell did you end up here? And he told me privately, he's like, he's no longer here. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. This is years ago, like right. 10 years ago.
Couldn't handle the
winter.
Right.
Part of me was like, what were you thinking, man? Like, I looked at the guy and he wasn't from this region. He was, Latino. I'm like, this is not going to be a fit, man. Or maybe you're an adventurer. And I mean, cool. I came out here and I have no ties to this state. But yeah, sometimes it's, you gotta think that through.
Yeah. But where I was going with my question, but I rambled on a little bit, was, with your platform, are you sometimes being like called on by players sending you stuff, or agents basically being like
we are?
Yeah. Sometimes we get like pinged from people like, hey, can you send my film?
Thankfully, I've never had an agent
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've never had an agent, but I can't think of a year where we have not gotten a very kind direct message or private message or whatever. Hey, could you share our video or check it out? And at first, like maybe 10 years ago, we took the time to reply. And it's like, hey, sorry, it's not our thing. At this point, we're just kind of like, we realize they're blasting a bunch of people at once. And we're like, if you can't look at our account and see that we're not doing this at all ever in our history, and we have like at this point a bajillion tweets, like probably not going to be us. But I get it. And I mean, I don't blame the hustle. I never get mad about it. I'm like, and first of all, like, shoot, these kids are in high school or even college. Like, I remember how dumb I was, some of the decisions I made. And I mean, this is an honest to goodness decision. This isn't like I got a misdemeanor decision. This is like, okay, you're trying to hustle. You just didn't know how to network or how to push that. I mean, I'm not going to blame that. But yeah, certainly.
Let's talk about the paid models of things that are going on in Division III now. Even we always jock or jostle back and forth with D1 Rejects about some of the pregame show stuff they're doing. Flow Sports is coming into the conversation now with respect to their subscription model, but giving schools $30,000 to $40,000 each, and giving them the ability to afford streaming every sport, not just football, basketball, and the majors, but allowing them to do, some of the smaller sports, and at least having the funding to accomplish it at the end of the day. What's your view on the Flow Sports model from what you've seen of this discussion, or the ESPN Plus model for that matter, with respect to, it ain't free anymore to a certain degree, even if it was at some point?
I think it's really one of those great questions that almost crosses across like all media in a lot of ways, like the paid model versus, just giving content out for free. And it's odd to see it when we talk about, I think, sports, but we take for granted the fact that, for example, if you follow, FBS at the top level, you're usually paying for it because you're paying for your cable bill, which is a lot of that's going to, a disproportionate amount is going to ESPN and the sports networks for that. So you are paying for content, but for some reason people have less problems with that. Now, I admit, like, ESPN Plus never really won me over. Probably because I'm lucky I went to a university where I get to see my team fairly embarrass itself on national television on a regular basis. Yeah, go Trojans. But at the same time, yeah, I know, fight on, Mo. And at the same time, my other team's a Gophers. Trust me, it doesn't get any better. But anyway, going back to the question, I mean, it's difficult because I've seen, for example, I'm gonna pick up a totally different division that won't pull in D3 because I think it's an even more kind of, it's a very good analogy because I'm obsessed with college football. I watch or follow all divisions, all countries. In fact, before we started recording, I shared this little thing from Jap. Actually, you can see a Japan college football helmet behind me, right? That's from their national team. I found it on their equivalent of eBay. And I thought, it was really neat to catch these games because they were literally starting at 3:00 Eastern. When the Hawaii test was done, hey, they're kicking off in Kobe right now. And they would be on YouTube, they'd be free. And then suddenly they all went behind paywalls. And I'm like, I ain't paying for that. It's just kind of like this issue you get to with like when it's accessible and it's free, you're more likely to go after. But when things go behind paywalls, do you really have that audience, and how much of it is, you hear that conversation even when you're talking about like when games, for example, again, using an FBS analogy, like Sacramento State just took a really wild financial deal to join the MAC. Like it is something else, but they're hoping that random people tuning in on a Tuesday night on ESPN or a Wednesday night for Maction might go like, hey, there's our brand. There's Sacramento State. And I don't know how much money they're going to make off of that, but they're hoping, I think especially it's weird to think of it as a Cal State worrying about this, but they've also got to worry about the demographic cliff that's coming for the next decade. It benefits my kids because they're going to be applying to college right in the middle of it. But I mean, for everybody else, it's like this is the biggest issue there is. So part of me, I get why they're trying to. That you need to get the money to pay for this stuff. I don't know how you can produce it for free, but how do you attract enough fans to then pay for it? It's a chicken and egg thing, and I don't have a good answer. Well, the person who does will be the one that makes, I think, a lot of these. I don't know if they'll make a fortune on it, but they'll revolutionize the sport.
Does monetization work for you at all on your social media scenario with all the videos and the impressions you get and everything else? Not asking you to expose your entire business model, but
no. I'm happy to explain it because, like, I'll tell you why I'm happy to explain it because all of us are volunteers. So I have never taken a check off of anything, and none of us have. So, but so on Reddit, we have always agreed with Reddit as kind of a détente. Like, we will, if anyone approaches us for an ad on Reddit, they're going to Reddit ads, not our problem. I've heard their deck is rather outrageous, but whatever, not my problem. And then meanwhile, we have this X account that we're talking about that does really well. And so we were approached for that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like we hadn't thought about it. We actually replied, the first potential advertiser, we actually said, like, here are all our rules. If you're still willing to do this, sure. And he said yes. And we're like, oh. As a lawyer, and I know I'm the undercover division, but I'm an attorney. I thought, all right, now I finally have some money coming in. So with our team, we actually paid a friend of mine who is at a white shoe law firm in Minneapolis to help us form a parallel. Well, it was mostly we wanted to form a 501c3 because we do charitable drives. And I'm like, instead of me just having the money going in a random bank account, I'm not going to say whose bank account, but then having to worry about offloading the money and all of that stuff, why not have a 501c3? It opens up so many more things, but I'm not going to raise money to pay a lawyer to make a 501c3. But when the money came in that way, I'm like, oh, great. So working with them, I set up a parallel LLC and 501c3. There's a whole reason why. I don't want to get into it. It has to do with the charitable purposes of money. And then set up this system. So that is literally all we do. We raise money. And the crazy thing is, like, these are just fans on an internet site, right? We have been donating so much money to Toys for Tots that if you go to their corporate donor page, we now have our logo on it next to Boeing. Awesome. And I'm going to tell you, between us and them, that's one is a triumph, the other is embarrassing, and we're so glad to not be on the embarrassing side of that one, especially when you have Reddit attached to your name. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like it is hilarious. It's like Boeing and a bunch of other Fortune 500 companies, and then us, a bunch of
and you guys.
I'm not gonna curse, but like a bunch of people on the internet who just happen to think it's funny to donate money to charity. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. What would you tell? There's some aggressiveness going on in D3 right now in the media sense, and some, I think, odd expectations of what the monetization potential is for this division. I think there's this assumption that there's a lot more money in it than there really does exist. And maybe flows money has sort of pushed that thought process in that direction. But what would your advice be to some of the younger up and comers. We've been around for 18 seasons here now. We have no expectations at all but to put out a show. Others, not so much. I think others are in this for the dollars. What do you tell people like that when you know what Division III's capabilities are or aren't from your experience now over these years?
Well, you really have to have a hard talk or hard analysis on where the money's going to come from. Like what untapped market are you looking for? I'm not sure one exists. I mean, there's a casual fan. How do you attract the casual fan when you're not on, when you're not on mainstream television where they can accidentally, but they're looking for sports, tune in and find it.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I get what you're saying. I mean, I joke we're like the monks of college football because we took a vow of poverty at RCFB. Because we can't raise money. That's all. That's the only thing we took. That's like the only thing we took from any holy order is poverty. So we're a poverty website. Waka waka. No, but anyway, as the kids say, right? I get it. I know how hard it is to put something on, on any kind of programming and kind of make it sellable, make it attractive, make it look right. And it's tough. I think there's maybe, and this is a generational thing, and I'm not saying this and these kids. I mean, there's a generation, probably the younger millennials going into Gen Z, and God forbid Gen Alpha when they get to this. They're used to the idea of the social media moneymaker. I mean, Mr. Beast is worth like $2 billion, but he ain't doing any, he isn't even going near sports. That's a whole other different entity. But there's this perception that because one or two people can somehow become super successful at doing some of these social media things, some involving sports. I mean, I actually don't know what Dude Perfect does, but in my mind, they're somewhat quasi-sports related, right? I don't mind the kids aren't into that stuff. Yeah, Portnoy. But I mean, he went at it in a different way. Like love it or hate it, Barstool found a niche. Like they're like the Maxim. They started. I mean, this is a really old reference, like a Maxim magazine of sports kind of crossover for the Boston area, and then it spread out. I mean, think about Facebook. It started as the Harvard Facebook or whatever they were doing it, and then kind of spread it from there, from word of mouth. I mean, I'm not gonna like that. That's how. But those are always exceptions. Those are exceptions, not the rule. So I think that's the concern here. I mean, if you're getting into any of this stuff, hoping to make a significant amount of money or even a living off of it, that's a really tall order. And I mean, the people who work for the top, I mean, okay, I cover a lot of FBS football. I sometimes go, I cover every national championship. I've covered the last 6. And, you talk to the people there. I know what the lifestyle is like for a lot of these folks. I'm a lawyer in real life. Not that this isn't real life, but I know if I want to have certain things, I've got to do that and sacrifice, but I still have to sacrifice in order to make time. I joke, I have a working hobby. Like I literally go cover a national, I pay my own way there. I get the media rate and then I get a free ticket in the press box. And all I got to do is write an essay, joke, quote unquote. Like as someone who just writes for a living, I'm like, all right, yeah, shoot, that's easy. Ask questions. Like really? Person who's trained to depose and teaches law students to depose, I know how to ask questions, except I just don't have to be a jerk about it. I'm preaching the choir over there. I can see that smile. I mean,
Objection.
I know you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Sustained.
Oh my goodness.
Listen.
So it's a bit of a ramble, but that's my concern. It's like it's almost reminding me of the. Gosh, now here's an older person thing. Like I remember the .com bubble. It happened while I was in undergrad, and we were analyzing it then. Like this seems weird. Weird. How is the PE ratio like this ever going to make money or something like that? And then just collapsed. So part of me is like, where do you think this money is coming from? I mean, it's like actually. I do on our X account, I do a Tuesday night, just call in, and everyone wanted to talk about Sac State last night. And all I kept thinking was, where's all this money Sac State keeps talking about? Like if Sac State's president suddenly says, we were suckered by a Ponzi scheme, or like, it turns out that crypto is worthless. I'll be like, okay, now it makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. Anyway, I can ramble on and on and on. So.
No, I love it.
But this has been great.
Yeah. So we want to leave you with this question, though, because we're going to finish up our show with this question, this segment, but we'll let you kick it off here. What are your way too early 2026 season predictions for D3 or otherwise here, or things that may affect D3 or not? What are your thoughts? You've seen River Falls kind of get decimated by both graduation and the portal to a certain degree. Whether or not they'll be back is anybody's guess. But the whole slew of Wisconsin schools over there and their influence right now in D3. You've seen Mount Union. Mount Union seems to be adding some extra coaches now for reasons which aren't fully clear, but maybe because they want to get back to the Stagg Bowl and win it here again. Yeah. But and then there's North Central being North Central every darn year, it feels like. But what are your thoughts? What are your predictions here? Way too early 2026.
Well, I just want to say one thing you reminded me of, especially with the idea of Mount Union adding extra coaches. And this is something I noticed not years ago, but a couple of years ago when I covered a rare example of Japan's national champion came to Southern Oregon in an NAIA. God, that's still a hard one to say. They got to change that acronym. NAIA school to play just an exhibition. And it was fascinating to watch because every time a U.S. team has ever played a Japanese team, you see they've just dragged. Like the NAIA programs are acting more like the D2. Well, they're basically D2, but they're acting more like the FCS programs. The FCS programs are acting more like the FBS programs. And there's always this trickle down effect. Like the top of the FBS tries to act like the NFL or try to bring more things from that. So that trickle down effect is still happening. So I'm not surprised to hear more coaches on certain squads, especially that can afford them. At a program like Mount Union. So I think that's part of a macro trend that you'll probably see, and I would expect that. But I'm curious really to go back to the kind of the jokey thing I said, like, is college football going to remain in the North across the board? I mean, in D3, it seems pretty safe. I mean, there aren't that many challengers in the South that seem, as viable. Likewise, D2. Likewise, the real question is FBS. The FCS seems like a foregone conclusion, but it's a question. Will football continue to show that the strength of it is in a lot of these northern states? Now, obviously, many of the players come from all over the place. I'm not trying to say like these are all boys from Indiana playing over there. No, but at the same time, I mean, that to me is a fascinating thing because it kept getting forgotten. Like you'd listen to people ramble about, oh, football's no longer relevant in the North. And part of me is like, do you pay attention to any division other than FBS? Do you? Because like every winner for like 9 times out of 10, it feels like the winner's coming from the North. I mean, we had that whole wonderful duopoly of, Whitewater and Mount Union for that decade, with the St. Thomas just poking their head in that one time, it's, to me, that's the really interesting macro trend. Like, will things continue to be a Northern-dominated sport?
Well, one thing I'll say to you is you will not live until you actually spend an afternoon with Glenn Caruso at Buffalo Wild Wings if you're a St. Thomas guy, because we had that opportunity in Canton this year and got to touch base with him. And for everybody that thinks that Glenn Caruso is this major character, he is, but in a really good way. So I thought you'd appreciate that fact that we spent our Stagg Bowl Sunday basically having Buffalo Wild Wings with Glenn Caruso and talking football.
The coolest thing was, for a guy who's been out of the division for over a decade now, like he
loves it.
He was all over everything in D3. Like we were talking about who's Ithaca going to hire as a new coach, and we talked about the matchups in the Stagg Bowl. Like he was so on top of everything.
He flew in just for it that day out of nowhere. We were talking, and he's like, "I'm booking it," and I'm like, "Hey, come on, we'd love to talk with you." So that's the beauty of it. Once you're in D3, it's like the connection is forever because you realize your roots are in that division, for better or for worse, but it's always usually with fondness, and I think that's a special thing. And I'm glad that you do what you do to pick up on things like what we do on Saturdays, et cetera.
I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, because I think it sort of tells the rest of the country, yeah, maybe small school football, but holy cow, did Johns Hopkins just kick a field goal into their own tight ends midsection? Yep, and then running in for a touchdown to win the game.
When you explain it to NFL people, you're like, college football is way more unhinged because not everyone is at the top pro where everyone is within, like, it feels like everything's within a nanometer of being precision. It's like, no, it gets a little wilder and a little woolier, and sometimes you see stuff that if you love the sport, you're like, this is why I love this sport, because of the unpredictability. And absolutely Division 3 and some of the stuff you guys highlight has been absolutely fantastic. I just want to touch one other thing. I wonder with River Falls, I haven't heard, has Andy Kotelnicki talked about it yet? Because that's his alma mater, man. And he became like a huge coach. In fact, he just returned back to Kansas to be back with Leipold. So I wonder, because I remember when I looked that up, because he's from Litchfield, which is just actually in the other direction from the Twin Cities. Actually about the same distance from the Twin Cities as River Falls is on the other side of the metro. But I thought it was kind of interesting. And then, of course, I had no idea.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say the River Falls has had like one of the most epic victory laps that I've seen in Division 3 football history. Like they have been all over
every media you could think of.
What was that restaurant? Those two, the wide receiver and the quarterback,
the
got their nickname. Tarnation the Tarnation Twins or whatever it was. That was truly one of the coolest things I saw during that game. I remember I screen capped that and threw it out there because I'm like, this is hilarious. This is awesome. And I was so happy like that took off. Because sometimes you see something amazing at a lower division, or any division, I should say, and you share it and you're like, it kind of goes into the ether, gone. But that was one where I'm like, please let this one hit. And it did. And you're like, all right, like I get no money for this, but I hope that people see this and want to see more D3 football.
That spawned from a question when I was out there, actually, for the semifinal where they beat Johns Hopkins 48-41. And I asked the question to Blake Rohrer, how did Caleb Blaha make you into a better receiver? And the answer involved Trent Jackson, their SID, saying, tell them the rest of the story, basically, about how you even met each other and how you even played.
Yeah, the bartender.
Local media didn't even know the story. And so we were sitting on gold that day. We didn't even know it. But I'm like, this is cool. Let's put this out there. And it freaking went crazy. So I'm glad for them, because they're all great people that we got to know.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of those stories out there that people just don't know because it doesn't get the exposure level. But this one did.
It's a crowded market.
So.
I mean, and that's their unfortunate problem. They're so close to the Twin Cities. So if you're local TV, you're going to end up covering like the Vikings, the other pro teams, and then maybe even the Gophers are struggling to get attention in that market. So everybody else, and there's so much good D3 football around the metro. In fact, I did. By the way, one last thing, one fun takeaway. Years ago, I decided to see which major metro has the most teams at all divisions around it. No, the leader was LA because there's so many JUCO teams. There's so many JUCO teams in the LA area. Right, but then Boston and the Twin Cities. And then the only metro that had every division within like a 30-minute drive of the center of town was Indianapolis. Because you may know there's like no now there is an FCS in the Twin Cities, so I probably have to reset that because St. Thomas is now FCS. But it was kind of a fun little ditty to do, and kind of think about which cities have the most, football around them and may not even appreciate it.
Yeah. For those that don't know who you are, tell them how to find you.
Well, I'm Bobak. I'm one of the team that runs RCFB, the home of college football on Reddit. We've got about, it's a good crowd, about 1 million people once every week kind of tune in, to kind of give comments and make interesting ideas. And on any social media, you can find us at RedditCFB, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. I think we have others, but I honestly don't follow the others. So, we're there.
Thank you, my friend, and thanks for everything you do for us.
Yeah, it was fun.
Likewise.
We could do this for hours.
Thank you to Bobak for joining us. It absolutely was.
A little Trojan.
Yep. Okay, whatever. Hey, it's all about the U. I don't know if you heard, though.
You guys were pretty good this year.
Yeah, we had our chances. They did better than that game that I thought they would.
Yeah.
But listen, wait till early 2026 predictions. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Any teams that you're feeling here as we sit here talking that might surprise people out there positively, let's say? Hey, who might you put your finger on and say, yeah, team has been ready to go, now they're going to go?
Jeez, it's funny because we had so many of those kinds of situations in 25, right? Because you had Franklin Marshall kind of come out of nowhere. You had, Eastern, you had, River Falls.
Yeah.
Although with Blaha, there was some expectations, but I don't think anyone would have predicted a national championship the way they, ran things out. It's a surprise.
I'm going to say Whitewater again. It's either Whitewater or Oshkosh, I think, are going to be the team that come out of that WEAC this year. and show people, that they're still around here, still knocking. We've had Peter Jennings, coach on our Stagg Bowl show. This is a man that eats, breathes, drinks this football scenario and what's going on in it at all times. And it's going to pay off here for him eventually in ways of getting big wins. And I think the Whitewater, Oshkosh could be a huge game this year to see who's going to be that team ultimately for the WEAC. That's my guess, my gut instinct right now, because I just don't see River Falls in that position. I think lacrosse might have an interesting year, with things changing now at the head coaching position. Let's see where it goes. But those are the teams for me that I'm going to be keeping my eye on next season for sure.
Maybe I would throw out Trinity just because,
Which one?
Yeah, the one from Texas.
Okay, because Trinity, Connecticut is now eligible.
Yeah, they are. And don't be surprised if your school's Pool C chances get dinged by the NESCAC runner-up, who might only have one loss.
Yep.
By the way, so keep an eye on that, folks. Because
a one-loss NESCAC team will qualify most likely.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be 2 bids going to. So maybe you could say a surprise will be that. But Trinity of Texas, I think they came up short in the games against Barry. I think they kind of had they were ranked in the top 5 a couple of years ago. Just from what we know from Coach Urban and company down there, it does feel like Texas is kind of wide open. Mary Hardin Baylor is strong, Hardin Simmons is strong, but there's no reason why Trinity couldn't come out of that bunch and be right back into the mix of things.
Aaron Van Buren asked us a question, AVB Sports, in your call out, and let's answer it real quick about targeting reviews. And there's a possibility that they may change the rule next year about the ejection policies, from what I understand, where they may not force a second half to be ejected or an ejection to last into the next game.
Yeah.
So they're talking about it. There's pluses, there's minuses about it from what I understand, but we'll see if they go there. Reviews themselves, this is one of those things that I really wish that they would say Division III and even Division II have a different technological ability to support the reviews that we're asking them to do. The replay is not up to snuff still, and it won't be for quite some time, to do what they're forcing these referees to do to reconfirm these fouls. My gut instinct is they're never going to separate the divisions in that way, but they should. Sadly, I don't think we're going to see a change in the actual review process this year, even though it amazes me the number of people, even referees that I know, that have said to me basically it was ridiculous that the River Falls situation was overturned versus Johns Hopkins. Yeah. And again, we're not trying to be mean towards River Falls to the player, and we've always said he didn't intend it, but that's not the rule. Okay, it's not an intention rule.
Just bang bang plays happen, and
But we saw so many brutal calls in Division I FBS, even with some of the targeting calls in the Miami Ole Miss game, if I remember correctly, even the national championship. We've gotten to a point where I think we have lost focus on what the rule is intended for, how to make sure it's applied to promote that idea of safety, and how to penalize when it doesn't, in a way that doesn't go over the top and negatively affect games well beyond what the intention of it was.
Right.
But that's not the conversation being had, except maybe the whole truncating a second half foul to just the rest of the game. But the flip question is, okay, 1 minute left in the second half, do you play with reckless abandon because I'll just be ejected for 1 minute?
Right. Oh, yeah, I guess so.
So
that way.
That's the downside of that possibility.
Yeah. Interesting.
So targeting, we'll see where it goes. I just don't expect monumental changes in Division III in that respect. Maybe a little bit better technology helps us. I don't know.
Yeah. The whole, it kind of reminds me of the whole, what is a catch question that happened a few years ago.
Yeah. We're still doing it a little bit too.
It's like,
ask Bills fans.
It's still a thing. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe we just can't figure it out. But there you go.
Yeah. Final thoughts. Season 18 pretty much over for us here.
It's basically the finale, right?
Yeah, we're not going to do kind of what other outlets are doing, trying to give you weekly content when it's off season, because we don't see the demand for it to that degree. If news warrants, we will do something to get you updated, be it a Twitter Space or X Space, or just basic coverage on our X platform handles. But I see the numbers out there, and the numbers tell me you're tired, we're tired, and we're going to get our energy back up for July, August, and hit it hard again. We did 43 episodes this season. Show me somebody else that's able to tout that.
Yeah.
So, but what are your final thoughts for season 18 as we head into season 19, most likely next?
Yeah, well, I think it was kind of the best of times, the worst of times. I think we had the privilege of presenting stories like Jack Curtis of Carleton.
Yep.
We got to cover some really great games over the course of the season. I know you attended close to 20 or something like that.
23 this year, yeah.
Yeah, in California, you went, you kind of went all over the place, right? But yeah, there's been this development, this kind of this new, more negative element out there, and I'm not a huge fan of it. It makes me happy in a way that we're retiring soon, so I don't have to deal with it for too much longer. And also too, just I think the sort of the rules and the changes that are happening in football in general, like we'll be sort of the way D3 is going to be in a couple of years isn't going to be what we were used to covering anyway. So it's probably just as well for us to kind of ride off into the sunset. But as long as there are teams like River Falls, knocking everything down, that can make these championship runs and do these really cool things with some great young men and great coaches like Coach Walker, and that's what we do it mostly for the kids. I mean, the coaches are an added bonus, and it's been fun to getting to know them over the years. I mean, it was really cool to get a text message at halftime from Coach Fitz being like, "This feels awfully familiar."
And having it in the context of the post-game press conference too.
Yeah. And so those kind of relationships that we've developed will keep me going for at least another season or two until we finally are too old and gray. But yeah, I'm right there with you. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this new season holds. It sounds like we'll be making a trip to New Jersey and New York to start things off. And there's some good games in the Midwest, which I'm sure that other folks will have covered. But this one, it's got our names written all over it.
Absolutely.
It's in our backyard, and
teams that we've gotten to know pretty well over the years now.
You've been to Belton a bunch of times and really developed some good relationships there in Texas, and I can't wait to see this program in person for the first time, and yeah, it should be fun.
Coach Harmon will be like, "Where you been?"
Yeah, right.
I did miss them last season, obviously.
Yeah.
But I put the value too in that last year and taking the step away from D3Football4me.com. It allowed me to focus on creating platforms that you folks wanted or needed with NPI and the Week 11 stuff. We've talked about this before, the Week 11 real-time NPI updates and stuff like that, because we realized, hey, if we were having trouble understanding it for the first season and trying to grasp it, how are you feeling, okay, as a casual fan and whatnot? There's a lot of change out there. AI is changing things remarkably in so many facets in a very short time, but we're staying ahead of it, or with it, perhaps is the way to say it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because we'll never stay ahead of it. It's going to get ahead of us soon. But the long story short of it all is that we're trying to be innovative. That's what we do. We try to bring new things to you every year, and give you still that coverage you're depending on at the same time. Crunch time has become part of the vernacular for people each week, to see their clips and everything else. You're going to hear us talk about them. The Friday live show is also part of the vernacular now as well. And so as long as you enjoy it, as long as you show with the numbers that you're watching it, we're going to keep trying to come back for as long as our significant others or health allow us to do.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
That sounds good.
So until next time, folks, which might not be until the summertime.
You think we'll do the Landmark Media Day again? I think so, right?
Yeah, we'll see where it's held because a little change over at Susquehanna too. You never know where they're going to hold it now. But
they'd have it in D.C. That'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool. Katie Bolovich, our friend over at the Landmark, we're available. We made a lot of friends throughout this season, and great folks out there like yourselves that have tuned in for about an hour and a half of this show. So thank you again for supporting us all along the way. And season 18 coming to a close here, folks. Cut.